9 strikes and they are out. November 11, 2020 by Anna von Reitz. In a normal game of baseball or softball, you get 3 chances to hit the ball with your bat. If you swing and miss the ball, it's called a strike. If you do this 3 times, you lose your turn and have to go sit down on the bench. This is called being out of action, out of play. So, 3 strikes and you are out. By my count, the FBI has had at least 9 strikes, and it is still padding around acting as a law enforcement agency. Let me translate: law enforcement agency. The business of law enforcement involves private security agents working for incorporated businesses to enforce corporation policies, which are a form of private law. Such private security agents may or may not also be tasked and able to enforce public law, or that duty may be left to their individual discretion. Let's use the first and most famous example of law enforcement activities on our soil: the Pinkerton agents who were hired and allowed to work in this country on behalf of the railroad barons, to provide security for trains, passengers, and cargo in transit within the railroad right-of-way boundaries. These were private security agents hired by corporations to prevent crime against those corporations and their clients within a narrowly defined international jurisdiction. Because the railroad corridors are in international jurisdiction, the railroad barons were free to hire an English security company, the Pinkerton Agency, to do this work. Thus, we had limeys riding our trains and shooting it out with the likes of the James Gang and patrolling our rail yards and wheelhouse and station facilities. This decision to allow the corporations to hire their own, in this case, foreign security guards, was fiercely debated in Congress, first of all because the work was going to Brits, and second of all because it posed a possible national security risk: what if the Brits seized control of our rail corridors? And third, because law enforcement is a known slippery slope. Once you allow corporations to employ hired private security forces, you are only a step away from gangs of thugs putting up barriers in mountain passes and robbing people for the local king or corporation. Let's put the nature of the FBI as exactly the same kind of agency engaged in private law enforcement activities into the spotlight. Like the Pinkertons, FBI personnel are foreign agents, involved in providing law enforcement for corporations, and they are working in a private security capacity. They aren't part of our government at all and have no granted authority related to our actual government. They are subcontractors working for subcontractors working for subcontractors. The FBI is owned and operated by yet another corporation that does business under the name, the United States government, which is a municipal corporation holding company that also runs dozens of other such agency businesses including the BLM. In our little analogy, the United States government occupies the same slot as the railroad corporations did in 1879, and the FBI are direct kin to the Pinkertons, only they are employed to protect the interests of the United States government, and all the corporations sheltering under its wings, instead of the railroad corporations. Do you all begin to see a problem with this arrangement? Consider that the FBI is operating under color of law and giving everyone the mistaken idea that they are part of the government, our government, that is, and that they are a public agency, when in fact there is nothing public about the FBI at all, and their services shouldn't be paid for with public funds, and their services should not be directed by some unknown, unauthorized, unelected, and unaccountable foreign municipal corporation merely calling itself the United States government. This is the agency crapola that has been passed off on the American people, together with the cost of it, ever since FDR. And it is all fraudulent. It is all done under color of law. It is all private and self-interested. And it is all foreign. Not an American agency in the bunch. Just for an example, both the BLM and the FBI are owned and operated by the United States government, incorporated, that is. Do you remember the famous Malheur National Wildlife Refuge standoff, where Americans had the audacity to occupy their own property and tell the BLM to stand down? Do you remember that the FBI, a sister organization to the BLM, both owned and operated by the same foreign municipal corporation DBA, the United States government, deliberately lied to the judges in that case? Repeatedly? They did the same thing in the Bundy case, and make no mistake, the Bundy family and their friends were targeted and were in danger of being murdered in cold blood by these cretins who were, at the same time, taking their paychecks and buying their guns and upgrading their vehicles directly out of the Bundys' wallets. The FBI also influenced the local sheriff's departments and state police to set up the ambush and roadblock that resulted in the deliberate cold-blooded murder of Lavoy Finicum. Evidence suggests that an FBI agent fired the first shot, just fired it in the air, so that all the other numbnuts would think they were being fired upon and would predictably fire on Lavoy, who was standing there innocent as the flowers in May, hands up in the air, trying to draw fire away from his family trapped and terrified in the car behind him. It was the FBI at Ruby Ridge, too. And here, we have another example of the FBI at work, protecting the USPS, another sister corporation. https://tinyurl.com/corp-fraud. Mr. Trump can't fire the FBI yet, because he isn't the President of the United States, Incorporated, no one is anymore, and the municipal assets including the FBI, Inc., that are subject to the latest bankruptcy and public trust fraud carnival haven't yet reverted to the equitable title holder, the United States of America, Inc., but they will. When the process is complete and the municipally held assets revert to territorial government control, let me suggest that it is more than past time to completely dismantle FDR's corrupt, agency system, and fire the FBI. And get rid of the United States government, Inc. too. Together with the IRS and BATF and all the rest of the color of law, alphabet soup hanger-ons that have been misdirected and used as private security forces to commit fraud and crime against the states and people. Just think of Janet Reno atop a tank, merrily firing at American families who were helpless inside the Branch Davidian compound, murdered in cold blood in Waco, Texas. Nearly 80 innocent people were killed there. Think of flamethrowers that we paid for, being used to burn little children alive in the arms of their dying mothers, and understand that what you were seeing was the BATF and allied corporate interests, private municipal corporations, engaged in mercenary warfare against their own employers, on our own soil. Unarmed Americans, murdered in broad daylight on national television. And deluded people so stupid, so clueless, that they were cheering Janet Reno on and waving American flags as it happened. The same basic thing happened on September 11, 2001. Corporations engaged in mercenary warfare, killing innocent people for their own gain, and then using private law enforcement and agencies acting under color of law to cover it up for them. It's time for the worthless and criminally misdirected FBI to go tits up, along with the United States government corporation that is responsible for misdirecting the FBI. Permanently. 9 strikes and out. It's time for the hypocritical, useless, U.S. Marshals Service to be replaced by organizations that do know what their job is and what we pay them for. Ditto the DOJ, the BATF, the IRS, the whole kit and caboodle of them. And all the vicious, criminal, deceitful, self-interested traitors who stood in the shadows and acted as the boards of governors, and boards of trustees, and boards of directors, the commissions of this and that, and the councils of government, all these manufactured out of thin air, misdirected and often criminal enterprises, all of which have been operated under color of law and conditions of fraud. They all need to fill the jails and prisons up to the top, overflowing and brimming over. All the people like Sheffer Cox, convicted of thought crimes by these same criminals, need to be set free, free to rejoin their families and rebuild their homes and take up their lives again. And the families of those murdered by these vermin, including the families impacted by 9/11, need to be compensated, with their damages taken straight out of the assets of the corporations responsible. When Grandma takes out the mop and bucket, you'd better believe that the house is going to get scoured down to the grout. After we drain the swamp, we're going to clean the barn, and then the house.